in the small, isolated town of Nahara, a place where the mountains loomed like guardians over the valley below, there lived a young woman named Maya. Nahara, a town of few people and even fewer outsiders, was known for its simplicity, its traditions, and its close-knit community. In this small world, everyone had a place. Everyone had a role except Maya. She was the forgotten one. It was a role she had learned to accept over the years, though not without its share of bitterness. Maya had always felt the sting of being invisible, overshadowed by her older sister, Rhea, whose beauty and charm made her the object of everyone's attention. Rhea's laughter could light up the darkest room, and her gentle smile made her adored by men and women alike. Maya, in stark contrast, had the quiet beauty of someone who had been hidden away, waiting for a time when she could be seen. Growing up, Maya had never understood why her parents, her friends, even the people in the village, lavished Rhea with all the attention. Rhea was everything that Maya was not: lively, outspoken, admired, and loved. Maya, on the other hand, found solace in silence. She was often left to the side, her own needs and desires buried beneath the weight of Rhea's ever-growing presence. As children, Maya and Rhea shared a bond, one that was once full of laughter and dreams. But as they grew older, Maya's quiet nature seemed to drift further away from her sister's magnetic presence. She could see it in the way their mother looked at them, Rhea with pride, Maya with a passing glance. And though their father loved both his daughters, it was clear that Rhea was the one he trusted to carry on the legacy of the family. The one who would one day marry well, produce children, and carry their family's name into the future. But Maya wasn't like Rhea. She wasn't made for marriage, for social gatherings, for the roles that women were supposed to play. She was quieter, more introspective, and most of all, she was resigned. She didn't have the beauty or the charm to stand out in the world, and that was something she had come to accept. Maya found peace in the small things, tending to the house, caring for the garden, cooking the meals. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes, her presence a quiet hum in the background of everyone else's lives. Yet, despite all her efforts, Maya's dreams, her desires, her very soul seemed to be forgotten. She lived in the shadows, never truly seen by anyone who mattered, and over the years, that silence began to suffocate her. The town of Nahara was familiar to Maya in a way that felt suffocating. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where every event was shared, and where Maya had always felt as though she didn't belong. She had longed for something more, something beyond the quiet confines of her existence, beyond the walls of the family home where she was always just a supporting character in the lives of those around her. She longed for a life where her voice could be heard, where she could be seen not just for what she did, but for who she truly was. But that was a dream, a distant, unreachable hope. No one cared to ask her what she wanted. No one cared to see the depths of her heart. Instead, she found herself caught in a cycle of quiet sacrifice. Her own needs brushed aside in favor of everyone else's happiness. And then everything changed with the arrival of Kieran. He was a native man, a traveler who arrived one autumn evening as the trees turned gold and the wind carried a chill from the mountains. He wasn't like the men who came to Nahara to visit or trade. There was something different about him. He carried with him the wisdom of the land, the deep knowledge passed down through generations. His presence in the town stirred something that had long been dormant in Maya's solar sense of possibility. She had seen him from a distance at first, standing tall and silent at the market, his dark eyes observing the world with a quiet intensity. Maya had heard stories about him, the mysterious traveler who had walked across the plains, from village to village, with nothing but a pack on his back and the dreams of the open road in his heart. But it wasn't until their paths crossed one fateful day in the fields that Maya truly saw him. And in seeing him, she realized something that would change the course of her life forever. Kieran saw her. For the first time in her life, Maya felt as though someone noticed her, not because of her beauty, not because of her role as a dutiful sister or daughter, but simply because she was herself. Kieran saw something in her that no one had ever bothered to see. The quiet strength that lay beneath her surface, the quiet wisdom in her eyes. His gaze, intense and steady, held her in a way that made her heart race. He didn't ask her to change or to pretend to be someone else. He saw her for who she was, and in that moment, Maya realized that her life, her forgotten existence, was about to be rewritten. As Maya continued to work quietly in the fields, her heart began to stir in a way it had never done before. Kieran's presence in the village had done something to her, to waken a part of her that had long been buried under years of rejection, silence, and a life of unseen sacrifice. Every day he passed by the fields, nodding at her, never hurried, always with that same quiet, knowing gaze. It wasn't the kind of attention she was used to. Men in the village had always treated her with indifference, if not outright neglect. Her role was clear. She was the one who stayed behind while others pursued their desires and dreams. But Kieran, he didn't see her as a backdrop to someone else's story. He saw her as a person. She couldn't quite explain it, but his acknowledgement, simple and sincere, sent ripples of longing through her. It wasn't that Maya had never desired love or connection. The thought of a life filled with affection, companionship, and shared dreams had crossed her mind many times, but it always felt like a far-off fantasy. She had watched Rhea, her beautiful sister, get courted by men from the village, their admiration overflowing. Maya had always been on the outside of these interactions, watching as Rhea glided through life with ease, never questioning her worth. Rhea was desired, loved, and envied, while Maya was expected to be the quiet, selfless one, the one who took care of everything behind the scenes. But there was a piece of her longing, a desperate yearning that had always craved more. She dreamed of someone who would look at her the way Kieran looked at her, with kindness, with interest, with the possibility of something greater. But Maya was also aware of the harsh realities of her life. She had never been given the opportunity to dream too much, to hope too fully, because those dreams had always been crushed by the weight of responsibility. She had been raised to be a servant in her own home, to sacrifice her own desires for the benefit of others. Her family, especially her mother, had never encouraged her to chase after her own dreams. The only thing expected of her was that she maintain the household, stay out of the way, and make sure that Rhea was destined for marriage and greatness was never burdened. As Maya grew older, she learned to suppress her own hopes, to ignore the pangs of desire that filled her heart, and to bury the feelings of loneliness that crept in at night. She had grown accustomed to being unseen, and the idea of being truly noticed, let alone loved, seemed like a cruel joke. Yet, when Kieran entered her life, It felt as though something inside of her was awakening against something that had been dormant for years. He wasn't the kind of man who offered empty compliments or sought to impress her with grand gestures. He simply acknowledged her. That simple act, his quiet nods, the way he greeted her with the same warmth he offered everyone else, the way. His eyes lingered for just a moment, longer than necessary, made Maya's heart race. She began to anticipate his visits to the fields, to hope for that fleeting moment when their paths would cross. It wasn't just about the way he looked at her, it was the way he made her feel. For the first time in her life, she felt like she mattered. That someone saw her not as a shadow of her sister, not as the background player in a family drama, but as a person worthy of attention, of respect, of possibility. But as Maya's feelings for Kieran grew, so did her internal conflict. She had always been taught to put others first, to submerge her desires for the good of the family, and to silently endure whatever came her way. Now, with Kieran's presence stirring feelings inside her that she had long suppressed, she began to question everything she had been told. Could she allow herself to desire something more? Was it possible to hope for a life beyond the limitations that had been set for her? Or would she be forced to sacrifice her own happiness once again, for the sake of her family's expectations and the role she had always been given? Maya's internal struggle deepened as she realized that Kieran had begun to see through the wall she had carefully built around herself. His quiet questions about her life, her dreams, her thoughts, made her feel exposed in a way she had never felt before. She wasn't sure if it was the vulnerability of it all that terrified her, or the sudden realization that he was challenging the very foundations of her existence. He wasn't asking her to change, but simply to be seen, to exist outside of her role as a caretaker, a servant, a shadow. And in that moment, Maya felt a surge of something unfamiliar, fear mixed with excitement. She didn't know where this path would lead, but she knew that if she allowed herself to open her heart, it would change everything. And that terrified her more than anything. In this section, we dive deeper into Maya's internal conflict, exploring her desires, her feelings of unworthiness, and the stirring emotions that Kieran awakens in her. The struggle between hope and fear of rejection plays a central role as Maya starts to question the life she has been forced to live. As the days passed, Maya found herself growing increasingly drawn to Kieran, his presence almost magnetic. She caught herself watching for him at the edge of the fields, hoping for that brief but meaningful exchange of glances that had come to define her days. His visits were always brief, and yet they carried the weight of unspoken words between them. Kieran was not the type of man who spoke in grand gestures, nor did he shower her with flowery compliments. Instead, it was the way he treated her with the same gentleness and respect he offered to everyone else that made her heart ache. With a mixture of longing and doubt. He never made her feel less than anyone else, never acted as though her quiet demeanor was something to be fixed or changed. He saw her for who she truly was, and for the first time in her life, Maya felt a shift in herself, sense of belonging. Even if it was still so new, so fragile. But the deeper Maya's feelings grew, the more torn she felt. Kieran had made it clear, in his quiet, measured way, that he admired her. He took an interest in her thoughts, her dreams, her everyday life, and that kind of attention so rare, so precious, was something Maya had never known before. He would sit with her on the porch, their conversations ranging from the mundane to the meaningful, and in those moments, Maya felt like she was finally seen. But as much as she wanted to open her heart, to let him into the fragile world she had built, she couldn't escape the weight of her own reservations. Kieran, a traveler at heart, had come to Nahara for reasons unknown, his soul bound to the land but never tethered to one place for long. Maya feared that if she allowed herself to fall for him, to lean into the warmth he offered, it would be a love destined to fade away, like so many things in her life. He would leave, just like everyone else. She had always been the one left behind, watching others move on while she stayed rooted in place. Maya's internal conflict was becoming unbearable, a battle between her desire for something more and the fear that it was all too good to be true. But something happened one evening that changed everything. It was late in the autumn, just before the harvest festival, when Kieran came to the family's home unannounced. The night was cool, the moon casting a silver glow over the fields, and Maya was out in the garden collecting herbs for the next day's meal. She hadn't expected him, hadn't even thought about him in that way on this particular evening. But when she heard the soft crunch of footsteps behind her, she turned to find Kieran standing there, leaning casually against the wooden gate. He looked different tonight, more serious somehow, his gaze steadier than usual, as if he had come to say something that had been weighing on his heart for a long time. I've been thinking about something, he said, his voice low but purposeful. I know this might sound strange, but I feel like I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. I didn't know what it would look like, but now that I'm here, I can't ignore it anymore. Maya's heart skipped a beat, her breath catching in her chest. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of something deeper. She didn't know where this conversation was headed, but she knew, deep down, that it was a crossroads. A moment where everything she had buried inside herself was finally going to come to light. Kieran stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Maya, he continued, I know you've been through so much, and I don't want to rush anything, but I have to tell you something. I've been traveling for years, moving from place to place, never staying anywhere long enough to build anything meaningful. But here, with you, with your family, I feel something I've never felt before. It's not about the life I've known, the places I've been, it's about this moment. About you. I can't promise you the world, and I can't promise that I'll stay forever. But what I can promise is that right now, in this moment, I see you. I see the person you are, and that's enough for me. The words hung in the air like a promise and a plea. Maya stood there, motionless for a moment, her heart racing, her mind spinning with the implications of what he had just said. He had laid his heart bare, exposing something so raw, so vulnerable, that Maya could hardly grasp it. For the first time in her life, someone was asking her to let them in, to trust that their connection could be something real. But fear, old and stubborn, still gripped her heart. How could she allow herself to believe in something so fragile, so fleeting, when every other part of her life had been marked by abandonment and loneliness? Could she truly open herself to the possibility of love, to the idea that someone might choose her, not out of obligation or pity, but because they saw her for who she truly was? Kieran's words were simple, but they carried a promise that, despite the fear that gripped her, Maya could no longer ignore. She wasn't sure what the future held, or how she could possibly navigate the turmoil inside her. But in that moment, as she looked into Kieran's eyes, she realized something profound. It wasn't about what she had been taught to expect in life. It was about what she was willing to create for herself. Love wasn't about fitting into a mold or meeting someone else's expectations. It was about finding someone who truly saw you, and Kieran, in his quiet way, had done just that. Asterisk days turned into weeks, and the subtle transformation in Maya's heart became undeniable. Her internal conflict, torn between the familiar safety of her hidden life and the thrilling, yet terrifying possibility of love, continued to haunt her. Every encounter with Kieran deepened her affection for him, but also heightened the fear that gripped her. Maya had spent her entire life being the person who was overlooked, the one who sacrificed everything for the happiness of others, and now, the man she had come to care for so deeply was asking her to choose something different. He wasn't asking her to change. He wasn't asking her to give up her identity or who she was. He was simply asking her to allow herself to be seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. But could she do it? Could she take the leap into a love that felt so unfamiliar, so new, when she had spent her entire existence hiding away? Maya's decision weighed heavily on her soul. She didn't know how to reconcile the woman she had always been, the quiet, invisible girl who lived for others, with the woman Kieran was asking her to become the woman who dared to hope, to be loved, to take risks. She spent long nights staring at the moon, her mind racing, torn between the dream of a different life and the fear of its inevitable collapse. Kieran had shown her something she had long buried, the possibility of being loved for who she truly was. He had given her the courage to hope again, to imagine a future where she was not the shadow of someone else, but a whole person, deserving of love and belonging. Yet the weight of her family's expectations, her responsibilities, and the fear of vulnerability threatened to keep her chained to a life of quiet despair. She had always been the caretaker, the one who supported others without ever asking for anything in return. But was it possible to turn the tables, to allow herself to be cared for, to be loved? Then came the fateful evening when everything came to a head. It was the night of the harvest festival, a night when the entire town gathered to celebrate the year's yield, to dance, to laugh, and to share in the joy of their collective hard work. Maya had never been one to enjoy the festivities. She often stayed behind, tending to the house, making sure everything ran smoothly while the rest of the village celebrated. This time, however, something felt different. She had promised herself that she would go, that she would take the first step towards something new, even if it terrified her. As she prepared for the festival, a nervous energy hummed through her body, and the weight of her decision felt like an anvil on her chest. But this time, something had shifted in Maya. She was no longer the quiet, invisible girl in the background. By the love and attention Kieran had shown her, and when her eyes met his across the crowded square, something inside her clicked. In that moment, Maya knew. She knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when she could finally choose herself. The world around them seemed to fade away. There were no expectations, no fears, only the simple truth of their connection. It was about the vulnerability of stepping into something unknown, trusting that, even in the uncertainty, you would be held. As Kieran's hand clasped hers, Maya felt a warmth spread through her that she hadn't known she was missing. This was something raw, something real, something that had been built slowly and carefully over time. Their hands intertwined, and for the first time in her life, Maya felt at home. She had found her place in the world, not as the forgotten one. Kieran had not just given her a new beginning. She truly was. As the night unfolded around them, with laughter and music filling the air, her all along it was the love she was now learning to give herself, highlighting her transformation from a forgotten. To trust Kieran and allow herself to be loved marks the beginning of her new life, full of promise and healing.